So these are the keys. I hope these help you and help your organization as well too, because it's very important we put them in place within any organization to ensure success, happy workplace, growth. Hey guys, welcome to the Brian Icenhower podcast. Can't wait to talk to you today about something that caused a lot of consternation out there and frustration out there in the world, especially for you leaders, but not just for your leaders, as all members of your organizations. And that's measuring the performance of remote workers, because so many industries out there have people working remotely now, in different ways. A lot of that's happened since the pandemic. And quite frankly, in some aspects and in varying aspects, it's here to stay. Now, most science out there says that the majority of people are a little less productive working remotely than in an office when they show up every single day. There's just so many distractions out there and temptations to deal with personal work and keeping those things separated. It is what it is. However, in this day and age, for lots of reasons, just finding available labor, finding specific skill sets, dealing with different needs of employees and contractors that work for you, remote work has become a real thing. And it's oftentimes, if you're able as a leader or an organization to accommodate and work effectively with remote workers, you can really, really run a much more profitable and successful and growth-minded business, but you got to know how to do it, right? Otherwise, we can't just sit there as leaders and declare, hey, remote working doesn't work. Everybody has to come in. If that's the case, understanding that maybe we have a little opportunity for some growth with regards to our own leadership skills and learning how do we effectively work with remote workers. Because a lot of leaders can do it and a lot of leaders are able to do it. And oftentimes as leaders, we fall out of that leadership mentality and into that little bit more of a victim mentality. And we'll say things like, wow, only certain people can do it. Only people I really trust or people that are really talented can do it. To some extent, I guess that might be true, but it's not the full picture. There's a little bit the leader can do too to set the stage properly, to ensure that we have some sort of working relationship and environment so that we are actually having productive individuals that are working remotely too. It's a two-way street. And as humans, we like to kind of, our natural default is to kind of blame and justify and deflect and say it's on them. It's nothing I'm doing. They need to step to me. Well, that's not true. We do have to kind of meet them halfway here too. So how can we ensure that the relationship as leaders is an effective one so that remote workers can work effectively? Because I can tell you right now, as many of you know, we run one of the largest real estate coaching and consulting companies in North America, and we coach many of the highest producing agents, teams, and broker owners and managers and brokerages and even national brands out there. And many of them work with remote workers very effectively. In fact, at ICC, we have tons of remote workers that work with us, especially when it comes to our administrative and operations staff. A lot of our coaches are scattered all over the place too. So how do we do that? How do we engage and make sure that we're productive and still maintain a culture that is positive for growth and all the individuals that work within the organization? So measuring the performance is often the key. Like, how do we measure performance? Because if we don't measure performance, oftentimes we can get to a really negative place, at least from a leader's perspective, about, man, they're not really doing any work. They're not responding to me. I haven't heard of them. Why am I paying all these people? Especially when there's ebbs and flows in cash flow, right? In the real estate industry, things can be very seasonable in most places in the winter months. So when cash flows down, we tend to cut our costs, and it's an unfortunate temptation that we at ICC try to prevent our clients from doing. We try to get them to capitalize their business so that we, are expecting the winter months and we don't have cash flow tightness and we don't have to let people go. However, there are different times too where there's just aren't as many sales. When sales volume drops and there's just not as many sales for lots of different economic reasons, things like that, interest rates moving around, weather, you name it, natural disasters, all those different types of things can decrease sales. And at those times is when we as leaders start thinking, wow, how, are these people really doing any work, or are they just like vacuuming and going on vacation? Especially if you start going on social media and you see them, playing all the time, and it's, sunlight out, and they're just having fun all the time. And then conversely, you've got the remote workers kind of in a similar place, right? Because they're They have this flexibility in schedule, which I think is great. I mean, they're not punching in, punching out oftentimes. So there is some flexibility here that you're able to provide that most organizations do provide. They can pick kids up from school. They may be able just to, a lot of people that work with me, I don't really mind when they work so long as, they get the work done. A lot of leaders are like that, at least to some degree. So if you start seeing them on social media, like it's the daytime and they're at the dog park, or at the daytime and they're out having fun with friends and they're not getting some work done that you'd like to have done, and maybe they didn't know that it was that urgent or not, or whatnot. I think it's really important there that we ensure that the employee or the independent contractor that works with you, they can move into a negative place themselves, because then they're making up for it late at night or on the weekend, because they do have that flexibility. And if there aren't expectations set as to when people are working, they might say, well, I took the day off, but I worked at night and too many times working at night. And they can get into kind of a negative place and say, man, this isn't any better. I'm just up nights and weekends working all the time. Yet they're forgetting all the time that they took off during the week, or they take off every single day, dropping kids off, going to the gym, picking kids up, blah, blah, blah. All those different things, or all whatever, hobbies or personal endeavors they have during the week, they can start to go in a negative place if we don't have some of these different performance measures put in place. So let's jump right into it. I've got 6 key areas I want to talk about here and I'm going to take some notes myself because that's what I always do. So I got my trusty pen with me. I'll go through the 6 key areas that we need to talk about. First of all, we got to choose the right metrics and goals. We have to measure something, right? We're trying to measure worker performance. And that just can't be done up in our head, loosey-goosey with a bunch of ideas and thoughts. Otherwise, it's going to turn into emotion. And if it goes into emotion, then we're going to be in a bad place when things are bad. Even though it's not their fault, we got to find someone to blame, justify, because we're humans and that's what we do. They will do it to you too. So we got to have some sort of performance metrics so we can know that they're doing and getting things done that they're supposed to. And so they can know when they're doing a good job, because if they don't know that they're doing a good job, then they're going to start blaming and justifying the organization, even though you might think they're doing a good job. So understand that having performance metrics in place, even though it does create this semblance of accountability and micromanaging, it is crucial in any organization, especially with remote workers. So you better have some metrics and goals in place for their daily activities and the results you expect from them. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Number 2, we're going to keep track of how engaged your remote team is. Number 3, we're going to lay out expectations for communication, how you interact with each other. Okay, so clear expectations on that. We're going to measure the ROI of your team, and we're going to talk about trust as well. We're going to talk about trust as well. There has to be trust involved for remote managers and employees and independent contractors to work together. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to talk about the buy-when rule. Okay, we're going to talk about how to implement the buy-when rule. So again, starting off, we're going to choose the right metrics and goals. We're going to keep track of how engaged your remote team is. Then we're going to lay out expectations for remote communication. We're going to ensure that trust is in place within the culture of your organization. And last, we're going to have the buy-when rule and talk about how to implement that too. Okay, so number 1, let's talk about the right metrics and goals. And you've always heard about KPIs, key performance indicators. I think every business book on the planet talks about those, and those are great. In my book, The High Performing Real Estate Team, I break key performance indicators down into 2 key areas, okay? I break KPIs down into ABIs and RBIs, okay? ABIs and RBIs. ABIs are activity-based indicators, which are very, very important to track. And RBIs are results-based indicators, which are what most people track, and they're also important, but they're not usually your blind spot. People tend to look at the results more, like, how much production we have, or how much income we have, or how we're doing with transactions closed throughout the year. We love to look in the rearview mirror, but we never really look out the front, windshield of the car, which is where we're headed. So for a growth mindset, we have to focus on activities because they generate the results, right? So we got to make sure people doing activities. So what are the regular expectations or metrics that we expect, our ABIs, that we expect our remote workers to perform. So we have to have ABIs. Okay. We have to have ABIs as well too, especially if we have remote workers that are independent contractors, like real estate agents. Boy, oh boy, we have got to know what those ABIs are, right? With administrative staff, very important as well too. It's a little bit harder sometimes with administrative staff to come up with some of those things. Activity-based indicators for agents, pretty darn easy, right? It could be contacts made, appointments set, it could be sphere of influence contacts made, it could be video text sent, it could be, expired listing, prospecting contacts and appointments, and then appointments set, appointments had. All the general lead generation expectations out there for agents are activity-based indicators. Results-based indicators for agents move into the, contracts signed, contracts closed, closings, GCI. Those are more results on the tail end of the transaction. There's not much we can do about those, right? They're there. I mean, I guess if your transactions are falling out, we can, work on ways to improve that, bulletproof your transactions a little bit so that we don't have such a high fallout rate. There's only so much there though. Most times the problem's up front, right? On the activity side. So very easy to track the activity, is very hard to get your agents to do it. That's why it's much more crucial to be tracking. Even if it's something simple with just like appointments had, that might do it. The teams that dial in a little bit closer to number of contacts made or contacts had, where you actually speak to someone that's a decision maker. It could be social media posting, content written. It could be farming contacts, all the different ways you can lead generate, which we coach and train them all in my consulting and coaching business. But we got to track something from an activity, or people are just going to hole up at home and not do it. Then they're going to struggle. Then they're going to leave you and blame you. And, to some extent, they're right because you didn't put these in place. Now, with regards to administrative staff, it's like kind of flip-flopping. It's much easier to track the activities, harder to track the results. Because with administrative staff, if you're holding them accountable, they're usually moving things forward on your business plan, right? You can see the progress either in your team meetings or in emails or in phone calls. You're talking and they're going to get this done, and then they're going to report back, and you can see them chipping away and getting things done. The hard part is the RBIs. Like, how do we see results? I mean, I guess you can show the results of the entire organization. Like, as an organization, we're growing. As an organization, we're selling more. As an organization, we're producing more, gaining more market share, gaining more profit, gaining more company dollar, all those things. That doesn't really tie to their performance. It's kind of everybody's performance, right? So oftentimes they don't get connected enough to any of those goals or results that flow through them, right? One of the things about goal setting that's so key is they must be specific and measurable. So we have to turn everything to numbers so that they are measurable. Otherwise, it's too subjective. We can have a lot of disagreements and we can actually backfire. So we always want to have goals that are SMART. And that starts with specific and measurable. That's the first two letters in the SMART acronym, right? So they need to be achievable, and they need to be reasonable. And of course, they need to be, determined by time. There has to be some sort of time that they are done. So let's start with specific and measurable though. When you have administrative staff, like a transaction coordinator handling your transaction or a marketing director, how do we pick specific numbers to measure on a regular basis to make sure that they're actually performing at a high level according to the goals you've set for them? That gets a little bit tougher, right? With marketing, it can be things like, SEO traffic to your blog, followers on Facebook pages, Twitter pages, whatever, YouTube channels. Could be engagement type goals with things like that. We should be doing surveys with, our listing and listing to contract people and our contract to close people to make sure that we're getting 5-star reviews. It could be how many 5-star reviews they do get for you on Google or Zillow or what have you. For online reviews, it could be 5-star responses to our survey as well too. It could be referrals generated, things like that. We definitely need to get measurables around their performance. Could be based on fallout rate too, sales rate. We definitely want to be tracking their communication, and that's usually included in a listing to closing checklist to make sure that transactional employees, the workforce and staff members, are reaching out at least on a weekly basis with all of our active sellers and all of our clients that are under contract, whether on the buyer or seller side, proactively reaching out to provide updates and engaging. We want to over communicate. We want to track that communication as well too. We want to ask for testimonials, referrals, things like that. And then they should be doing follow-up after closing as well too, right? So, follow up, 30 days to make sure that they don't need any help with vendors, things like that. Moving out for your home anniversary to check back. Hey, how are you doing? Do you need, we want to be your go-to source for your home. So if you need a vendor to help you with improvements or construction or someone just the daily maintenance of it, always come to us first. We want to be your in-person Annie's list, so we can track that and make sure that we are managing all those metrics to ensure they are doing a good job, right? So very, very important that we are tracking ABIs and RBIs for both agents and admin staff on a very, very regular basis, okay? Now, moving on, they're also going to need great culture for their team. So that great culture is how we keep track of how engaged they are, right? So that's why we need some sort of regular meeting on a weekly basis, and they're remote. So it's typically going to be by some sort of video conferencing app, whether it's Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever you want to use out there. We need to have a regular face-to-face, right? We got to see each other. And I really prefer you to try to kind of insist on people turning their video cameras on, because that relationship and rapport building from culture really, really creates a different dynamic. And it creates accountability too. So people aren't responding to emails and trying to get other work done. That's what you'll feel naturally. And that'll create a little bit of critique. We want to see people engaged with humans, okay? We do know science is out there, and all these things are very important for success. And it's very important we coach our people to turn those things on so that everybody can get engaged, and it really improves culture. So that's really important that they do that, and tell them it's to help them. Otherwise, I'm going to think you're doing something else, and I want my mind to go there. And I really want us all to get to know each other and improve the culture of this organization on a regular basis. Okay. So that's really important that we do establish weekly meetings that way to go over these metrics, to discuss things and to build rapport with each other. So it's got to be weekly, probably no more than an hour a week. You might, depending on how large your organization is, you might have like a leadership meeting. You might have like a new agent meeting each week too. You could just have a sales meeting for the sales side. That's really common when organizations or teams or brokerages get a little bit larger. I know within mine, I have multiple meetings a week, a pretty big organization. So I have different groups of people I'm meeting with every single week. Sometimes those meetings are 30 minutes. Sometimes they're an hour, depending on how much content we have at each. We always start on time. We always end on time to prevent more frustration as well too. So that's culture. You can enhance culture other ways. Having like a group Facebook group, like a private Facebook group, so people can chat in between is really important. I'd probably stay away from group texting unless everybody likes that. There's a lot of people that don't like group texting, and it's kind of, blows you up all the time. People liking and hearting things, and depending on, I've seen a lot of mixed reviews on that. So, but like a group Facebook group, where you can share things and talk a lot is great. Some work really well by email. There's a great, app called Slack out there, which kind of isolates your texts, and you can kind of control your own notifications from it. You can do it in WhatsApp as well too. Really good little apps you can use out there and believe it or not, they really do promote the culture of your team and engagement on another level, which I think is really, really awesome. So depending on, what floats your boat, and agents will typically love the Facebook stuff. They're a little bit more uppity, floating. You get your admin staff loves email a little bit more. They tend to hide back a little bit more and not being as open on social media as agents are, out there, very engaged, introverted individuals. Generally, there's exceptions to that, but that's generally the way that works. So, finding something that works for you there is really important. But the team meetings is non-negotiable. That needs to happen. Don't have those on Mondays. There's too many holidays on Mondays. Don't have them on Fridays. Too many people going on vacations on Fridays. Have them Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and try to have them in the middle of the day for at least the majority of your group is in a certain time zone. I really like to try to see those between 10 and 2. So, people that have kid drop-offs, kid pickups, go to the gym, things like that, get all that stuff done. So it's not such a struggle for people to make it. Most agents are the most active and engaged between 10 and 2. They're typically after 2 showing property, listing property. Very rarely during the week, Tuesdays or Thursdays, are they that active in meetings with clients. So try to do that. That's some important stuff there. And that will really help you enhance your culture within your team. And laying out expectations for remote communication is really important. Okay. Well, that really, applies to the weekends and nights. A lot of the large organizations we work with have inside sales agents, and inside sales agents, they may be staggered so that some are covering nights and some are covering days and some are covering weekdays and some are covering weekends. And that's real clear as to who's covering what. However, when it comes to agents and staff, really important that we have clear expectations. Now, it's not uncommon if you allow your staff to work remotely. There's an expectation, hey, and they usually have a reason they want to work remotely, and it usually because flexibility. They got stuff they need to handle in their personal life during the week, and that's cool. However, we're paying you 40 hours a week or what have you. So, that means there's going to be an expectation you might be a little bit more available later in the evening sometimes, or on the weekends sometimes. It's, because if you don't lay out that expectation up front, they'll start to disappear Friday afternoon until Monday. Yet they took off all that time during the week. And now we have someone who's not as productive. They're just not working as much, right? So it's really clear. We explain up front and set clear expectations up front that we're going to expect, maybe it's a little bit less of a response time if we ask them, if we call them or email them or Slack them or what happened. Maybe we expect you give them a little bit of grace for how long it takes them to respond, but we do expect not waiting till Monday morning when everybody's busy and running and that kind of thing. That's up to you how you want to do that. And maybe, it's not okay to initiate by phone. Maybe it's not by text. Maybe we just do it by email on the weekends. That's fine too. Whatever works for your organization and your people. Just make sure we're clear about it up front, that there's going to be that expectation, because I've seen this work all different ways here. But it's important. Admin staff typically, people, are typically going to be a little bit more introverted, right? So they do want a little bit more of a break than agents are used to after hours and on weekends. So it's really important we get very clear with the administrative staff when they're remote workers. Agents, different. Agents, it's more about them communicating to you as the leader. They're going to write an offer on Sunday night. How should they do that? How should they engage with you? Should we actually ensure that they're watching a remote video first about how to write an offer for this brand new agent that started working with you before they ask you questions? Or should they let you know that they're going to be, setting an appointment for a listing 2 days in advance before they just throw it on you at the last minute and say, hey, I'm about to go on a listing appointment in an hour. I need your help. Clear expectations of how much in advance, they should be letting you know so you can adjust on as to, you can have some sort of type of say in the matter as a leader as to when you're going to help them rather than a lot of emergencies at inconvenient times. That's really, really important. Okay. So make sure we lay out the expectations for remote communication. Now, the key here, and this one's a quick one, but don't forget to measure the return on investment, right? And I think a lot of this, ties back in, it's quick because it ties back into your results-based indicators. We got to get very specific with the activity-based indicators for remote workers. Don't care what they are. And then the results-based indicators, the results of their work must be measured as well too. That'll help them feel better because they'll know that they're actually making a difference and that they're doing a good job. It gives them a lot of closure and peace of mind to not always think that they're, am I failing? Am I doing well? That's terrible to never, ever, ever know if you're doing a good job. And then you as a leader, of course, if you're deciding if this is something, for you to have confidence in this person, to appreciate this person, and to truly believe that this person is making a positive impact for your organization, and at the very least be retained by you, you need to know, are the results mattering? So if we're measuring things like engagement and followers or something for that marketing director, or whether we're getting referrals from our transaction people or they're doing follow-up calls, those results are going to tell us, okay, we're actually getting a good ROI. It doesn't necessarily have to be revenue. With the agents, we can see the revenue they bring in very easily. There's commission income, but we can, reasonably assume that all of these other different results that we're measuring for the metrics on the admin side are giving us a return. So we got to make sure we measure that ROI, and it ties back in to the way we measure the daily metrics, right? Track the activities, track the results, and then make sure that we're very, very clear. Here's the kicker though. It's got to be on some sort of scoreboard or dashboard, like I talk about in my best-selling book, The High Performing Real Estate Team. We've got to show it to them. They got to see it visually, not just talk about it, not send it to them in an email. It's got to be in that weekly team meeting Again, it doesn't have to be, it could be a nice fancy spreadsheet. It could be, just something, a spreadsheet or a scoreboard service you pay for, like Sisu. A lot of our organizations work with them, SISU, and there's lots of things in between. I just want to make sure it's visible, even if it's just the first 5 or 10 minutes of your team meeting, so everybody sees it, and that creates a lot of public accountability just by having it up there in front of everybody. I don't even have to talk about every line or go through it all, just put it up there. That public accountability creates a lot of internal personal responsibility. So making sure everybody can see that and it really creates great coworker appreciation, because now everybody can see what everybody does and how they all play a part. And it really helps, really helps people get to know what everybody does. It helps people's relationships improve because of that too. Helps respect improve, all of that, because everybody can at least see it. Now in the team meetings, you just pick out a few metrics that you want to talk about, typically good, positive ones. I wouldn't spend too much time shaming people in public with bad metrics. That might be a more of a one-on-one thing. However, we got to have some sort of dashboard or scoreboard up there to ensure it happens, right? Very, very important. Trust is huge, guys, and this will create trust. So that's going to be our fifth metric. Trust is huge. So we got to make sure that we have trust between remote employees and managers. And I think you're seeing that by having a lot of these different steps, all 6 of these steps in place is going to be huge. Okay. That, if that's where that trust will come from. And that's just going to have to be a little bit of unnatural behavior from you as a leader, because you're just going to have to let go and assume they're getting it done and trust your systems, that we have metrics that are measuring this, that we have a weekly team meeting where everybody's going to see whether they're getting it done. If you cannot trust your people, we've got a much bigger problem than our measuring stick. And, especially when you have all these things in place, right? Because we should be seeing results. And if not, the results speak for themselves. You don't have to trust, but you need to trust your systems more than you need to trust the people. If you're having a hard time trusting your people, then the first thing I would do is say, well, why am I having a hard time trusting people? My systems for measuring performance must be the problem. So we got to focus away from trusting people and more onto trusting our systems, because we need to have good enough systems in place, and this is assuming that there's not some like outrageous lying going on with someone or something that's, obvious. But it's very hard to judge whether you can trust people if you don't have good systems measuring activity-based indicators, results-based indicators, a weekly dashboard, engaging together, creating the culture that we have. It's just not going to happen, guys. There's just no way. So, gauging and measuring remote worker performance is the key to establishing that trust, but the trust must be in the systems, not so much in the person, or it's too subjective and your crazy town mind is going to start to go in dark places when things go dark in business or in your personal life. We want to take all that stress of trying to decide what's what out and make this a stress-free organization with really good systems in place. Okay, lastly, number 6, the buy-when rule. This is crucial with remote workers. It's crucial at all times, especially with your admin. When you tell people to do things, you tell them by when do you need it, okay? I can't tell you how important that is. So if you need to, because if not, you're asking administrative people to make some very tough, stressful decisions, right? Because that's the hardest thing, especially with introverted people that have a very hard time, making decisions. They expect you as a leader to do that. So prioritizing is the toughest thing about time manager. And if you're constantly vomiting tons of different tasks on people, that's okay. But if you're making them decide which is most important without giving them any communication, you need to first open up to them. Hey, if I forget to tell you when I need it, you ask me. If you're deciding as to when I need it, then you need to ask me, because that's my bad. I forgot it. And you as a leader need to own it and start telling them, you know what I mean? And if they're bugging you, hey, you've given me a lot here. Which is more important to you, this or this? Because I'm seeing a possible conflict on time, right? And like, let's say if you got a meeting on Friday and you need them to prepare a large outline for you or something, I don't know, or a presentation or something. And they give it to you Friday before your presentation. Your presentation is 11. They give it to you at 10, and you're on the go at 10, and there's something wrong with it. And maybe I forgot to include something, or they made a mistake, and it's too late, and you got to go. Well, maybe that's on you. You should have told them, hey, I needed it the day before so that I have time to review it and give it back to you, or make the changes myself. So it's on you as to when they need it. Otherwise, they don't know and how big of a priority to it. You might have forgotten that you gave them some other tasks that might have been even more important. So you need to kind of clearly communicate the when. The by when is everything to admin and operations staff. It's also important with agents too, because oftentimes the interaction from agents flows the other way. They need you as a leader, like we talked about earlier. And when they need you as a leader, that changes everything. Right? Like they need your help. So how do we, so by when do they need to come to you so that it's not an emergency? And you'll see they tend to, they're just agents. They wait to the last minute, especially when they're new ones. Those are the ones that tend to need your help more. And they'll wait to the very last minute. Like, hey, I'm going to meet with someone right now. Or I got a phone call tonight. And I need your help. When did you know about this phone call? So we start telling them the minute you see it, you need to reach out to us. So you give me some decision-making say in the when we're going to help, right? So when is everything, and that's going to improve your culture because everybody's treating each other with respect with regards to time management. People will have more time because they're not just dropping balls all the time and trying to put out fires and emergencies and stress, because that's what really will ruin culture too. So make sure we implement the buy-win rule throughout your entire organization. Not just with your admin staff, with your agents too. You have to set clear expectations. That'll protect everyone and make everyone much more happier. So these are the keys. I hope these help you and help your organization as well too, because it's very important we put them in place within any organization to ensure success, happy workplace, growth. That's what we want. Again, we always want you guys to increase your production, at the same time, generate more income. But most importantly, maintain your life balance with it too. And I think this will help everyone in your organization do that as well too. So good luck and thanks for being here, guys.